really tough and they're really rough and nothing's working, but there's something inside of you that says, I just have to follow that because you don't know who you're going to be.
Welcome to the Binge on Self-Love podcast. My name is Anna, but you can call me Anci, and thank you so much for tuning in. Binge on Self-Love podcast is about navigating binge eating disorder struggles, disordered eating, and negative body image. Although I share my personal experience with having a negative body image, eating disorders, and I do uncover bits of my personal story, this podcast is not as much about me as it is about you. Beautiful human beings who struggle, who fight, who grow, and who evolve every single day. This podcast is for anyone who wants to feel supported on their recovery journey and simply for anyone who's trying to improve their relationship with themselves. I believe together we can turn something so negative, such as binge eating, into something more positive and hopefully go from binging on food and self-hatred to binging on self-love. Subscribe to the Binge on Self-Love podcast on your favorite platform and tune in every Tuesday for a new episode.
But there's something inside of you that says, I just have to follow that because you don't know who you're going to be.
Disclaimer: Binge on Self-Love podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It doesn't provide professional medical advice and it is not a substitute for diagnosis or treatment. In this podcast, we cover the topic of eating disorders, so if you find this topic triggering, it may be better for you not to listen to this podcast. Always make sure to put your mental health first. Hello everyone, welcome to the Binge on Self-Love podcast. My name is Anna, but you can call me Anci, and I'll be your host. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to invite you to follow Binge on Self-Love on Instagram and TikTok, where I share quotes and tips on how to add a little bit more self-love into our daily lives. So make sure to follow Binge on Self-Love on Instagram and TikTok. And now, without further ado, let's get into today's episode. As you probably understood from the title of this episode, I decided to talk about things like weight fluctuation, stretch marks, wrinkles, and cellulite. Our bodies change and will keep changing as we get older. That's just normal part of being a human, of evolving, of growing, of getting older. And it's a good thing. Imagine if we were born and our body would stay the same for the rest of our life. That probably wouldn't be very smart, right? Luckily, the evolution has made our bodies smart enough to evolve, to change, to adapt to always changing circumstances. And thanks to that, our body is able to grow, it is able to heal a wound or an injury, it is able to gain weight and lose weight, it is able to carry a baby, to give birth, it is able to do so many amazing things. But we live in the 21st century, and throughout the years, some of the changes that our bodies go through are now perceived more as an insecurity rather than an ability of our body to adjust, or simply as a normal part of being a human. To be more specific, I'm talking mainly about weight fluctuations, stretch marks, and cellulite. At first, it may sound like such a superficial thing to discuss. Like, aren't there more serious topics to talk about? But if you consider that the diet industry and the cosmetic business is making billions and billions of dollars each year off of people's insecurities, such as weight, stretch marks, wrinkles, or cellulite, it suddenly doesn't seem like such an insignificant thing, does it? Another reason why I think the topic deserves a separate episode is that it does affect our body image in one way or another. If we are continuously being told, get rid of cellulite using this product or doing this technique, or lose weight once and for all using this miraculous product, or by following this weight loss plan, or by doing this workout, then who wouldn't feel insecure about these things, right? It's fair to start by saying that we all feel insecure about our bodies, our appearance, and ourselves from time to time. That's normal. I don't think anyone feels confident 100% of the time. If you do, then good for you. But speaking for myself, I don't. I feel insecure pretty often, and my weight fluctuation, my stretch marks, my cellulite, and just many of those things about my body make me insecure sometimes. I've noticed that with the summertime just around the corner and with the time of wearing shorts and skirts and dresses and bikinis, I started to pay much more attention to my lower body, specifically to my cellulite, my stretch marks, and these tiny red veins covering my thighs. And the more attention I paid to it, the more insecure I've started to feel. And I started to ask myself, can I go out looking like this? I look disgusting in bikini. No, I can't wear that. Look at my thighs. And honestly, all those thoughts are nothing compared to how much I used to hate my body in the past and how badly I've treated it. I'm not sure exactly when I first noticed I had cellulite, but I do remember, on the other hand, when I first noticed that I get stretch marks. It was in my early teenage years when I gained quite a lot of weight, or not necessarily a lot, but I was this quite skinny kid and I hit puberty, I've gained weight and my body changed pretty quickly. And I've noticed these red stretch marks all over my butt cheeks and part of my thighs. And I wasn't really super insecure about it back then. It was actually much later that I've learned to hate it. And I remember I was rubbing this herbal oil all over my thighs for like a year, massaging it, hoping it would go away. And then later, when I discovered I had cellulite, I remember massaging my thighs with all these different creams and brush and showering my legs in cold water, hoping it would help. It did help a little bit, I think, but like I've said, I wasn't super insecure about it back then. It was much later, actually, that I became really self-conscious about my body and myself in general. And that was when I started nitpicking and overanalyzing every inch of my body. I think, like many people, I came to a conclusion that you only get cellulite and stretch marks when you gain weight. Fast forward a few years, I've developed anorexia. I was trying to recover from it, but it never really happened because I went straight to binge eating, which is something you probably already know about if you've listened to this podcast before. And it's also something I've been dealing with for pretty much 10 years, I think. And that's actually the time when I feel my body image has suffered the most damage because on one hand, I get used to being super skinny, into being viewed as the girl that doesn't eat or the girl that is so skinny. But on the other hand, I've gained all this weight from binging. My body was now at the quote-unquote health weight point, but my mind stayed in the disordered place. And I didn't know how to cope with the changing body, with my changing eating habits, and with people around me suddenly not being as interested in me anymore because I was now healthy and they didn't really care that much anymore. So here I was, 15 kilograms heavier, alone, binging, and with body that was completely different from what I've been used to seeing in a mirror for nearly 2 years. I've had visible stretch marks again, I've had cellulite all over my thighs again, nothing fitted me anymore, I was feeling sick from everyday binging session, and all that led me to hating my body even more than ever before. And again, I thought that if I were skinny, I wouldn't have any of that. I wouldn't have cellulite, I wouldn't have stretch marks, and I would just be perfect. I've read articles and videos on how to get rid of cellulite. I bought all of these different creams again, brushed my thighs, massaged my thighs. I followed workout videos that promised to fight the cellulite. I even stopped going to the swimming pool because I was terrified or literally mortified of showing my quote-unquote damaged body. And like I've said, I came once more to a conclusion that if I were skinny, none of that would happen. I wouldn't have stretch marks and I wouldn't have cellulite. The funny thing is that now I am in recovery for a few years. I don't binge anymore, or at least not to an extent like I've used to. And I think I'm finally reaching a more balanced relationship between me and food and me and exercise. I don't restrict myself. I'm moving my body pretty regularly And mentally, I'm at much better place than I've used to be. But guess what? I still have cellulite and I still have stretch marks, and my weight still fluctuates throughout the month. But all of that is normal, and me and you and nobody else needs to hate their bodies for it. I'm not saying I'm going outside and telling everyone how much I love my cellulite or that I love feeling bloated or whatever. It does make me feel insecure on some days, but I no longer feel any hate towards my body because of it, and you shouldn't either. But I no longer feel any hate towards my body because of having stretch marks or because having cellulite or because my weight fluctuates from time to time, and you shouldn't either. I've been on both sides of the spectrum, from being underweight, exercising 6 to 7 days a week, cutting on carbs and sugars, to being nearly overweight, binging 7 days a week, not doing anything at all. And in both cases, I still had cellulite and I still got new stretch marks and my weight kept fluctuating. Having cellulite is normal. Having stretch marks is normal. Having wrinkles is normal. And for your weight to fluctuate is also normal. I chose the topic of weight fluctuation, cellulite, and stretch marks on purpose because I know that as women, we are being taught to worry about it. The diet industry, the cosmetic brands, and the media, all of them tell us to fight it using their products or services. They tell us to hide it and to reduce it. If you Google how to get rid of cellulite, you'll get 5.7 million results. And if you Google how to get rid of stretch marks, you'll get over 17 million results. So that's just to give you an idea how popular both of those topics are. If we take a look at media for a little bit, on the one hand, there are more and more influential people on the internet who try to show the reality of how they look. Whether we're talking celebrities, models, or influencers, some of them decided to share the reality and to show that not even they look like the picture-perfect version we see online. And they show they're just like us. They also have some insecurities. They also have some imperfections. On the other hand, though, the internet, TV, online and offline media are still full of photoshopped pictures of models and celebrities whose skin and body seems to be perfect, without a single dimple, stretch mark, or a wrinkle. And that makes us feel even more insecure about ourselves. And in my opinion, I think there's been way too much damage done by the industry to our self-esteem already, that it's simply time to show more of realness and just accept the fact that perfection doesn't exist and that we all have something we may feel insecure about. But it shouldn't make us feel unhappy or unworthy. It shouldn't mess up with our body image, and it shouldn't make us feel like we need to change ourselves in order to fit some standard. Let's talk about weight fluctuation first. It's normal for our weight to somewhat fluctuate. According to Medical News Today, our weight can fluctuate between 1 to 2 kilograms in a span of a few days. By the way, I will link all the sources that I'll mention today in the show notes so you can read it if you like. But now back to the weight fluctuation. There are many factors that affect it. First, there are some factors that we cannot control, such as our age, our gender, our hormone levels, our genes, health conditions, menstrual cycle, medication, our metabolism, etc. But then there are factors that consciously or unconsciously affect our weight, such as the calorie intake, what food we eat, alcohol consumption, smoking, how much water we drink, whether or not we move our body, how much or how little sleep we get. So as you can see, there are many factors that can affect our weight, and for our weight to fluctuate, it's completely normal. Of course, if you notice any sudden changes or you have any other concerns, always discuss your health with your doctor. It's always better to get checked if you have any doubts. Personally, I've learned when my weight fluctuates. Usually it's like a week before I get my period. I am very bloated. I retain a lot of water. I eat more than I eat on other weeks. I usually don't sleep as much as I would like to. Also, I know that when I don't sleep enough, then my weight always fluctuates a lot. And I'm mainly speaking based on how I feel physically. I try not to weigh myself very often just because I don't think it would be beneficial for my mental health, but I do feel the difference on certain days. And I do feel insecure about my weight sometimes. I think that's normal. As much as I try to improve the relationship I have with myself and with my body and with my body image, I still feel self-conscious sometimes, and I think it's completely normal. And if you feel like that too, just try to remind yourself that it's normal for your weight not to stay the same all day, every day. Now let's talk cellulite and stretch marks for a little bit. According to medical news today, around 80 to 90% of women do experience cellulite. And I'm saying women on purpose because cellulite predominantly affects women. And when it comes to stretch marks, according to healthline.com, around 90% of people have stretch marks. So as you can see, both cellulite and stretch marks are normal. So many people have them, and they're not something we should feel ashamed or insecure about. As I've said earlier, I became very self-conscious about having cellulite and stretch marks on my butt and my thighs. And I used to believe that I only had it because I was quote-unquote fat. Even though weight gain does play a role in getting stretch marks or having cellulite, is definitely not the only factor that is responsible. People of all ages, shapes and sizes can get them. Having a certain body shape doesn't mean you won't have cellulite or that you won't have stretch marks. Stretch marks can be caused by gaining weight, losing weight, growing, being pregnant, simply by your body changing, by muscle growth, by your skin needing to adjust. And you can get them anywhere on your body. According to the Academy of American Dermatology Association, even your hormone levels and your genes affect whether you will or will not develop stretch marks. I've used to have very visible stretch marks all over my thighs and my butt cheeks, but they faded over time. And to be honest, 99% of the time I don't even notice they are there. More specifically, I don't really care. Like I said, I get more aware of it during the summer maybe, but it doesn't really bother me anymore. And it shouldn't really bother you either. It's nothing to feel ashamed of. When it comes to cellulite, a common misconception is that only people with higher weight have it, which is false. People of any shape and size can have cellulite. And also, having cellulite doesn't mean you're quote-unquote fat. Just like stretch marks, cellulite is affected by multiple factors such as gender. Women are significantly more prone to having cellulite. Other factors are hormones, age, genes, overall lifestyle, our diet, alcohol, cigarettes, water intake, circulatory levels, etc. I don't think accepting our quote-unquote imperfections means we need to be going around and showing everyone our cellulite and stretch marks and saying how proud and happy and confident we feel about having them. I mean, like, you can if you feel that way, of course, but what I think is more important is just to accept it as something that's normal, that's human, and as something that so many people have, and that it's not something we need to feel ashamed of. And most importantly, not let something so insignificant compared to other things in our lives affect our self-esteem and our body image. What I found really helpful with accepting things like cellulite, stretch marks, wrinkles, or weight fluctuation as a normal part of my life and of my body evolving has been paying attention less to people on social media and more attention to people in real life. Because if you do that, you'll notice that none of us is as perfect as we make it seem on social media. You'll notice that we all have some things we feel insecure about, but those are things that make us who we are. If I look online, I will feel like I'm the only person on earth with cellulite. But if I look around in the real world, I'll notice that so many people have it and that it's not really a big deal. Another thing that has helped me in a long term was just treating my body right, which for me personally means improving my relationship with food, with exercise, and finding a happier place mentally. And by doing so, I really stopped caring whether I have or I don't have the so-called cottage cheese legs or stretch marks, because I knew I was treating myself right. And all of these minor things suddenly didn't seem as important to me. One more thing that helped me was realizing that no one really cares whether I have cellulite or stretch marks, or whether my scale shows a different number than it did a few days ago. My partner doesn't care, my family doesn't care, and people that are important to me don't care. So why should I care whether I have cellulite or stretch marks, or whether my weight fluctuates a little bit? Social media, TV, magazines, commercials, the internet, the content that we are being shown every single day make all of the things we've talked about today like a big deal that we should feel insecure about, especially with the summertime approaching. I've come across the article about Teddy Mellencamp showing her cellulite on a red carpet, and my first reaction was, so what? Like, who cares? Don't we all have it? But then it made me think it's really sad that it's still something that we give so much attention to in a negative sense. Like, if it was something we should feel embarrassed about or ashamed of having. As I've said, we don't need to be going around convincing everyone we love it, but I feel like we should learn to accept it just as a really normal part of our bodies. Our bodies have changed, they are changing right now, and they will keep changing in the future. If they stay the same, we couldn't grow into the person we are right now. If our bodies wouldn't change, we wouldn't be able to make it through some of the most difficult periods of our lives. So I would leave it at that. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, make sure to subscribe to the Binge on Self-Love podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or YouTube, and follow Binge on Self-Love podcast on Instagram and TikTok. You will find all of the links in the show notes. I'll be back next Tuesday with another episode. Until then, have a great rest of the week and talk to you soon. Bye!
Have to be your biggest fan. And when things are really tough and they're really rough and nothing's working, but there's something inside of you that says, I just have to follow that. Because you don't know who